welcome to another Move Early, Move Often chat. I'm Thomas Karakolis. With
I'm
me,
wait. Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. No,
Introduce yourself, Blake.
no, you go ahead.
Blake Martin. Okay. Actually, what we're going to talk about this week is going to be picking up on some of the stuff we talked about last week.
Yeah.
I don't think we were as scientific necessarily as either one of us would have wanted to
We were
be. I don't know.
super scientific. What are you
Oh,
talking about? We were
that
citing
as.
research. Oh man,
Mm-hmm.
we're all over
So
it.
we're going to use some more big words, though,
I hope
this week,
so.
I think, to understand motivation for exercise.
Yeah.
And there's a theory that you actually presented to me, like I was not aware of it beforehand, and
Yeah.
it's called the self-determination theory.
SDT
Um,
for short. That's what the kids are calling it out
okay,
there in the
so if
scientific streets.
if either of us use the phrase SDT, that's what we'll be referring to this week. But
Yeah.
to your understanding, let's say, what is self-determination theory?
Okay. So the big idea there's it's a theory that encompasses a whole bunch of other theories. That's the first thing to say about it. It's not simple in and of itself, just like one kind of unified theory. So there's a whole bunch of things, and it comes from an educational context. There's this other thing within it called cognitive evaluation theory that it's about the impact of psychological needs and other like social conditions on our ability to regulate our behavior. So there's kind of like what's inside of you and what's outside of you that makes you do what you do. And so last week when we were talking about factors involved in exercise, we were looking at all this stuff like, things including your upbringing and your race and previous history of exercise and your socioeconomic status and just all these different things. But this goes in the opposite direction a little bit, and it says, okay, once we put all of those things aside, once we push all of those things off to one side, what's left? And so
Mm-hmm.
what's left is forces that are outside of you and forces that are inside of you. And this tries to self-determination theory tries to unify a lot of those different ideas to look at that different stuff. And I'm probably going to say it wrong, but Deci and Ryan are two major researchers that spent a lot of time looking at self-determination theory. And
Yes.
they this is like from the 70s, so it's older.
Yeah.
It's not a new theory.
Yeah. But when it comes to understanding motivation for exercise, I think what you just basically described here was the idea of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. So,
Right.
just to be clear, intrinsic motivation means where the motivation comes from within yourself, whereas extrinsic, there are external factors outside of yourself that you're motivated by to exercise.
So, what would you give as examples of extrinsic versus intrinsic values? So, you said intrinsic first, so intrinsic first.
Yeah. So it's funny though that you mentioned that because you did send me the Breck questionnaire, the BREQ questionnaire, and that's kind of what jogged some of my memories. And so some of those questions ask intrinsic versus extrinsic motivators. So I exercise because it's fun would be a
Yeah,
very intrinsic
right.
motivator. Um, I I exercise because others will not be pleased with me if I don't,
Yeah,
as an extrinsic type of motivator. So those are two specific examples. But yeah, in a more general sense, I guess intrinsic ones are ones where it's like I want to exercise because I'm going to enjoy it, or I'm going to get
right.
satisfaction, or I'm going to get some sort of pleasure from it. Whereas extrinsic are I almost feel obligated, or like I'm supposed to, or I need to, or I should. And it's just as I'm saying this, I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the idea of extrinsic motivators. Like I'm thinking of the idea of the carrot versus the stick in terms of motivating, where you'll have like positive consequences versus negative consequences for doing or not doing an action. So would you agree with the statement that intrinsic motivation is more like the carrot and extrinsic motivation be more like the stick, or am I way off?
Well, so that's a great question. And so just to refine that a little bit, one of the really important ideas is that you can have both carrot and stick in intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. For example, let's say you decide that you're going to participate in a competition, a friendly competition at your workplace.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna do this. How many days can we all run 5 kilometers each day? And so you get out and you do the running, and there's going to be some kind of prize at the end. So that's very much carrot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's very much external as well. And whereas even internally we can have stick. You can feel like from inside of yourself. I exercise because it's a belief that I have about
Yeah.
what I should do. And you could say, oh, I'm not adhering to this belief that I have, and therefore I'm a bad person, so there can be the carrot versus stick equation doesn't necessarily apply to the degree of intrinsicness or extrinsicness. It's more like kind of the negative reinforcement versus positive reinforcement
Yeah.
for the behavior.
And
Yeah,
you're right, it doesn't map onto intrinsic versus extrinsic.
that's
And that was a
correct.
very, very polite way of telling me that I was completely wrong, which I definitely appreciate. Because I was thinking, even in terms of your examples, so the idea if you said you have a friendly competition at work and it could all be intrinsic motivation. Either you want to win, which would be a very positive way of looking at it, or you
Yeah,
don't want to lose.
right.
Um, being the negative outcome.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely for intrinsic, you're able to easily give examples to disprove what I just said.
Yeah, but I think it's important to understand that I think that question of carrot versus stick is really important because there's kind of like these negative reinforcing things and there's these positive reinforcing things, and there's things that where like but it's kind of where do we place our sense of value in the exercise? Is it for things that make us feel good all by ourselves, or is it to look good in the eyes of others? So a really important thing. Let's take the idea of physical attractiveness. Um, so I can want to feel like I'm physically attractive for myself, or I can feel like I want to be, or need to be, or have to be physically attractive for another person. And
Hmm.
this a desire to satisfy my own image of what is a healthy, strong body, or the society's image, like this kind of airbrushed, hyper thin, uh, you know, 0% body fat humans that we see, but with huge hips and huge breasts. So like no body fat, but like really voluptuous at the same time. So just completely unrealistic. The desire to conform to that thing, that's really an extrinsic motivational factor. But to want to look strong and fit, because you're that feels good to you, that's different, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we have to decide how far along the whole thing are we going in terms of what we want to do. So self-determination really kind of centers around what is the thing that you need to do in order to feel in control of the whole thing versus what does society want you to do, and society being your mom, your dad, your friends, your boss, all these people who put expectations on you.
So I'm going to ask you a couple more questions here, Blake, and I don't know. Well, one of them I think you do know the answer to because you just told me the answer before we started recording this. But the second one is a genuine curiosity-based question
Right.
that I'm hoping we can explore. So, in terms of what are shown to be more effective tools of motivation or reasons to be motivated. So, my first question will be, in general, is there evidence to show intrinsic motivation is more effective or extrinsic motivation is more effective? And then the second question, which we haven't talked about, so I don't know if you know the answer, and I certainly don't myself. But I'm very curious: is positive reinforcement or positive motivation more effective, or negative more effective? So do you want to give the answer to the first question first,
Yeah.
intrinsic versus extrinsic?
So, intrinsic versus extrinsic, intrinsic motivators are have longer duration and
Hmm.
more stickiness. There's this word that I'm looking for. I can't find it, but basically, people are more likely to you have better adherence and for longer period of time if you're intrinsically motivated than if you're extrinsically motivated. So if you have goals like I want to be healthy, or a strong body feels good to me, or um, I like the way I look in the mirror when I exercise. That is those motivators will last longer than my wife expects me to look a certain way. My boss will be angry if I gain 5 pounds. So all those external things, they don't end up lasting as long. And they don't create the same adherence as do the intrinsic ones. So
And that
really
makes
important.
sense,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. Um, because in the end, this desire to do things for yourself, we need to have agency over ourselves. So it's really important. Like there's this part of this whole self-determination theory is that there's central to it is psychological theory that we have to take care of some basic psychological needs, right? So basic needs theory is
Hmm.
part of that. And sorry, there's just we need to be able to have a sense of agency, self determination. We need to, so that it feels like it comes from us. We need to feel like we have um, ownership over it, over the movement or activity. And we need to have a sense of connectedness with others. That's another thing, like from this basic needs theory. And we need to develop a sense of competence. These three
Yeah.
needs, competence, agency, and connectedness, these are like really central. So,
And
um,
these are intrinsic needs then.
yeah, these are intrinsic things.
Okay.
So that's part of the reason why some people really enjoy working out and doing activities with others, because of that sense of connectedness is really fed. Now,
Yeah.
there's this kind of double-edged part to it where it's there there's an intrinsic factor. I need to feel connected, but it could become an extrinsic thing. I'm going to disappoint others if I don't,
I was
right?
just thinking that exact point. Yeah, you're
Right.
absolutely right.
So that's really important to recognize. Why am I doing it? Am I doing it because I love to be connected, or am I doing it because I feel like I'm going to do someone harm, or I'm doing the relationship harm if I don't do it? So that kind of plays into it too.
Yeah, there's a lot of subtleties here, and I wouldn't suggest they're contradictions, but
No.
you can't make a lot of blanket statements, is what I'm kind of learning. And because I tried to make a blanket statement earlier, and that was clearly rebunked,
Rebunked,
debunked, debunked,
rebunked,
debunked.
and
Rebunked's not a word.
rebuffed. Rebuffed.
Rebuffed. That, yeah, I did confuse rebuffed and debunked. Okay.
I
Anyway,
debuffed it.
so the second part, quickly, is there any sort of merit to the idea that either positive or negative sort of motivation is better than the other?
Yeah. So I'm not completely familiar with that. My general suspicion, just kind of, I'm gonna hazard guess and say that positive reinforcement is probably better. I do know that um, I do know that in the research that has been done around self determination theory, there's a lot of focus on the positive reinforcement. So I don't know if that's just libtard scientists trying to make things all touchy feely, but I kind of think, I kind of suspect that because the focus is very much on the positive affect and positive feelings, that that positive reinforcement is going to um, be more meaningful. Because like one of the things that they look at in terms of self-determination theories, they look at the manipulating the variables that so that you can improve people's likelihood of doing exercise. And so they look for meaningful rationales for change without pressure to comply.
Hmm.
So that right there says to me, okay, that the pressure to comply, that becomes negative, right? That becomes some of that negative reinforcement. Oh, you're not one of us, or you're not showing up,
But
and
that also can be effective, though, right?
sure, sure, but
Hmm.
because it's extrinsic and because it's negative, it might not have as long duration. I think again, eh, like CrossFitters love going to the gym to do CrossFit, even though they might be able to do it at home. And it's partly because they're in that environment where people are saying, whatever weight they're picking up, or however high they're jumping on the box, or however many wall balls they throw, or whatever they do, they're just getting that, oh, that was awesome. And there's the high fives and the encouragements, and everybody goes and they have a glass of water and they say, oh, you were really crushing it. And there is in that environment, there's just really that building up, and it's really
Yeah.
positive. And there is that sense of connectedness that I was talking about earlier with those basic needs theory thing that really flows into it, right?
Mhm. Okay, last minute or two here, because I think obviously our thesis is always that activity is good, it's healthy, it'll help
Amen,
you
brother.
live longer,
Preach
it'll
it.
help you
Preach.
live healthier, help you be happier. Um, what can we take from this conversation in terms of if we're not motivated to be active, if we're not motivated to exercise, is there anything we can do to either find, because we said intrinsic motivation is better, but extrinsic motivation obviously still works. Otherwise, we wouldn't talk about it. Are there any strategies, or what's the number one strategy? If I had to nail you down to one strategy, what would you suggest somebody that wants to be more motivated to be active? How do they accomplish that?
Yeah. Um, so there's those three kind of critical pieces. There's the relatedness piece, like finding connection with others. That's really
Hmm.
important in self-determination theory.
So find a group of people to exercise with is
Yeah,
would help.
exactly. Or even someone to encourage you, just someone, not
Yeah.
a person who's going to be super judgy or tell you
Hmm.
that you did wrong if you didn't do it, but just say, hey, did you get out today? That's great.
Yeah. Even just a
And
partner.
yeah, just someone to check in with you. And in our work time one, we'll sometimes go online and we'll have someone just say, hey, I'm going to run up and down the stairs,
Yeah.
and then everybody says sure, and say, are you in? And then we say sure. So it's kind of like also being that person, just kind of offering to others, would you do
Yeah,
it?
and that's a positive motivation because
Absolutely.
no one sees that you say no to it, but people I find opt in because
Yeah.
they want to have the positive feeling of feeling like they're opting into something.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the relatedness one.
Yeah.
There's the having a sense of mastery or proficiency over something. So that whole thing, like, is there something that you kind of want to get better at? Is there
Yeah.
something that you kind of think, hey, I'd really like to be able to do that? And maybe it's, I don't know, pull a wheelie on a bike, or ride a unicycle, or ride a skateboard, or whatever it is, like just something that you think would be kind of cool. Maybe those are all outrageous to you, like they seem super, like way too far, and maybe you just want to quietly kayak down a stream or something.
Yeah.
I don't know,
It
whatever it
sounds like you're
is.
talking about setting a goal, though, essentially, is
Yeah,
the idea of
yeah,
mastery of something. And I think we can talk another week actually about setting goals and how we
sure.
set realistic, or I don't like necessarily the term smart goals, but I think you know what I mean.
You don't like it.
I don't know how I feel about it. I think I'm in the
It's,
position that
it's
when
like
you were about
it's like saying I don't like beavers and you're Canadian. Like, I mean, come on, man.
it just seems cliche to me. But I
Yeah,
guess
okay,
you
okay.
didn't like the term exercise hygiene, and that kind of
But
blew up.
it grew on
So
me. It grew on me.
yeah, so maybe
I'm with you
smart
now.
goals.
Okay.
Okay, and then what's the third one? Sorry, before we go, because we're running
Wait.
close to 20 minutes now.
Oh, sorry. So the mastery agency, being able,
Agency, yes.
having the ability to control your life, and for me personally, Thomas, that's the big one, and especially in terms of even things like combating depression. When I say, okay, you know what I can do today? I can spend some time doing activity. I can have an exercise session. I can go for a run. I can go for a walk, and I can that is a thing I can totally control. There's a lot of
Hmm.
things I can't control, but you know what? I can go for a walk. I
Yeah,
can I can just kind of walk up and down the steps in my house 5 times. I can control that. And to just even control that moment in my life when so many millions of other things might be going haywire, it's amazing. And
it's
mental health right there in a
it's
moment.
yeah, it's really funny that everyone you mentioned, I'm like, oh, that's a really good idea. That's the best one. That's the best one. And I completely agree with you actually that the last
Yeah.
one's probably one of the most important things because it's for me, it's something as simple as I'm just having a really shitty day and things aren't going well. And I know I can get outside and I can go for a ride or a
Yep.
run or even something as simple as honestly just a walk for like half
Yep.
an hour. Um, and I know that will change my mood and
Yep.
it'll help me get through my shitty
Absolutely.
day. And so
Yep.
they're all super important. I asked for one, you gave me three, but you built up, and I liked it. The third one was definitely the best. So
Yeah,
thank you for that, Blake.
that's what I'm all about.
All right, man. We'll chat next week.
Okay. Yeah, we will.
All right.
Take
See ya.
care. Have a good one.